Okay, so from the pages that we were assigned, it started out by talking about research methods for programs and audiences, and how there were three different categories: qualitative and quantitative measures for the programs themselves, qualitative and quantitative measures for the audience's preferences and reactions, and quantitative measures of the audience size. Ratings are the major form for program evaluation and have the most influence on programs' selection and scheduling. Then it talks about the different methods used in the past for measuring, like people meters, AP meters, and set-top box measurement. It talks a little bit about DVRs and how they affect the relationship between the producers and the program distributor, and the relationship between advertisers and program distributors. Talks about the threat of DVRs and what they have on the industry, because it runs on advertising dollars, the industry does, and if people can skip through commercials, then advertisers are going to pay less because their ads aren't being seen. And how there's one possible way that programmers can combat this, and that's by product placing during the programs. Then it talks about cable and satellite ratings and how they can't really be directly compared to broadcast ratings. It talks about the newest alternative for Nielsen ratings, and how that is content power ratings, and how they count not only TV viewers, but also they add in social media mentions. It emphasized that it was important to remember that there is a difference in TV ratings for national versus local, and Nielsen is the only company in the US so far that produces both local and national TV ratings. It talks about sweeps, which afford 4 nationwide audience measurements for all local television stations, and that's in November, February, May, and July, and they do this by using people meters and diaries. And it's also important to remember that the stations pay for those ratings in their market. Then it goes into national ratings and how network viewing estimates come from a nationwide people meter sample. Then it goes into radio. Arbitron is the only company that provides quantitative local and national radio ratings, and what I thought was interesting is that Arbitron gets its ratings by using paper diaries, which I don't think that would be very common. It collects ratings for 48 weeks in larger markets and for as few as 16 weeks in the smaller markets, and that's called continuous radio measurement. Radar reports the performance of the national radio services. Radar ratings are the only nationwide radio network ratings. ComScore provides broadcast type ratings for the online radio industry. Videometrics provides the TV industry's only comprehensive measurement of the video marketplace. And then Nielsen developed something called gameplay metrics, and it's ratings for video games. And these reports tell us who is playing what game, the type of console they use, the genre of the game, and what the other media that the players are consuming as well. Selling advertising within the games and consoles is actually part of a national media trend. Then it mentions how the larger audiences share captured by cable create demand for a more precise understanding of audience viewing habits. Then some of the ratings terminology and measurement computations. For each market, Nielsen collects ratings in units, and the smallest measurement unit is the metro area. The next largest is the local DMA, and the largest is the Nielsen Survey Index area. The NSI area includes the DMA, the metro area, and some counties that are just outside the DMA. The NSI area is rarely used by commercial TV programmers because the DMA is more useful. Urban radio programmers use the metro area ratings because competing big city radio signals generally blanket the metro. One thing that the chapter emphasized was saying that audiences count, but only in the way that they're counted. I thought that was important to take note of. It talks about the difference between the ratings and shares. Ratings are a percentage of the total number of households tuned to a specific station or network during a specific day part. Shares are a percentage of households that are actually using a radio or TV and are tuned to a specific station or network during a specific day part. And because of that, shares are always going to be bigger than ratings because they're based on a smaller sample of people. Sales staff use ratings to set advertising rates. Programmers use shares and decisions about programs, and because they show how well a program does against its competition. And the combined ratings of all stations or networks during a particular day part is where we get the estimate of HUTs. Radio ratings represent individuals, so it would be called persons using radio, or PURs, or persons using television, PUTs, if you're calculating individual viewers for television. Programmers use two computations in calculating ratings. They use the average quarter hour, the AQH audiences, because the audience is usually measured in 15-minute intervals, so the quarter hour. And the cumulative audience estimates, which are called CUMs, the CUM number of people tuned in during specific 15-minute intervals. And CUMs are always larger than AQHs. Differences is that AQHs, in AQHs, people can be counted more than once in a total day part. It talks about the difference between reach and frequency. Reach is the potential exposure, or the net size of the audience that actually gets the signal, while frequency is the number of times a person was exposed to a particular advertising message or program. Then it talks about radio reports. Radio stations compare their share in cumulative audience with that of other stations with similar formats in the same market, and that's how they are able to compare. The most popular stations use shares, and the least popular are going to use cumulative audience ratings. Ratings books for radio have these categories. They have share trends, demographic breakouts, day part averages, CUM estimates, hour by hour estimates, and it said it had a few more specific ones, but those are the major categories in the ratings books for radios. Radio's demographic groups are more precisely defined. Most programmers don't want just plain facts or plain ratings or shares, so they use all the information they get from the ratings providers to compute other ratings or other things, like radio uses the information to find out the time spent listening, and television uses the information to find out the time spent viewing. And then it talked about how to calculate turnover, which is the rate at which an audience changes during a time period, by dividing the cumulative audience by the quarter hour rating. And that shows changes in audiences' viewing habits or listening patterns. And then it said that television usually has more turnover than radio. And that's where it kind of stopped.